The Mecklenburg County election debates are a service of WTVI, Mecklenburg County, and the League of Women Voters of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. The views and opinions expressed in these debates are those of the candidates and do not necessarily represent the views of WTVI, its management, Mecklenburg County, or the League of Women Voters.
PBS Charlotte and the League of Women Voters present Election Debate 2016.
Hi, I'm Danielle Koser with PBS Charlotte. Welcome to the 2016 General Election Debate sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. During the next 20 minutes, you'll hear from the two candidates in the North Carolina House of Representatives District 105 race. Questions for today's debate were provided by the League of Women Voters of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. The candidates were not given the questions in advance. I'll call on the candidates in random order. You will have either 30 seconds or 1 minute to respond. Now, if you'd like to challenge an opponent, raise your yellow challenge card. You'll have 30 seconds to respond to a challenge. Each candidate has 3 challenges during this debate, and you'll be allowed to make a 30-second closing statement. Now, let's meet the two candidates for North Carolina House of Representatives District 105. They are Ms. Connie Green-Johnson and Mr. Scott Stone. Let's get started with the first question. Does the legislature have any role to play in diffusing situations like the recent protest and racial tension in Charlotte? Why or why not? And you'll each have 30 seconds to respond to this question. We'll start with you, Ms. Green-Johnson.
Yes, I do think that our legislatures have a role. And the role should be in terms of open dialogue, having better education, and offering housing. The issues weren't just about the shooting, it's about the depressed situations in Charlotte.
Thank you. And your response, Mr. Stone?
Well, the legislature does have a role to play, and part of that role is something we did that actually set the parameters for video that's going to be released. While interestingly enough, the new bill, which I voted on, which is House Bill 972, that actually the legislature regulated the release of videos. And why it did that is because previously there was no consistency across the entire state of how one police department versus another would actually release video and how video would be treated. So we did that so that way it would be taken out of the hands of the police departments and into the courts. So it was better for everyone.
And again, you'll each have 30 seconds for this question. Oh, go ahead and challenge Ms. Green-Johnson.
House Bill 972 is twofold. One, it has the needle exchange program, which is an excellent program. And the other is having the transparency not really being as transparent as I see it and most people see it. And so my question to you, House Bill 972, you think it's a perfect bill in terms for the community to feel that it's transparent?
I guess, can I respond to that?
If you respond, you do need to use a challenge.
I'll use my challenge then, since you did. There is no perfect bill that has ever been passed in any legislature in the history of the world. So I would say that what this did do, though, it had the backing of both the Fraternal Order of Police and the Black Political Caucus came together to create one bill. It was passed the Senate 48-2. It passed the House 88-20. And while it is not perfect, what it did is it gave people who were involved in the incident, who would be on tape, or their families who were on tape, they have an opportunity to see those tapes within 3 days. So that's an opportunity for full transparency that way. So it's not perfect, but it's certainly improved what we had before, which was no consistency.
All right, the next question, you'll each have 30 seconds to respond. Do you think police officers should be required to turn on body cameras? And we'll start with you, Ms. Green-Johnson.
Yes, I do. I do think that police officers should turn on body cameras at every incident.
Thank you. And your response, Mr. Stone?
Well, certainly if they don't have them on, for example, you have a shooting like we had, if somebody's camera is not on and not recording, it automatically gives people a concern that, oh, what are they hiding? So certainly you have to have cameras on whenever possible. That's a different scenario from when do you make them available publicly. all those different videos, but you should be, if you're wearing a body camera, you should have it recording.
And the next question, even though the state constitution gives the legislature the power to overrule local ordinances, are they abusing that power with recent actions? Please explain. And you'll each have 30 seconds to respond. We'll start with you, Mr. Stone.
Well, I'm sure I could guess what is the underlying question here. That is appropriate to do in a lot of cases, because in a lot of times the city of Charlotte, for example, or other jurisdictions will make laws that just are inappropriate, and when one jurisdiction does it, it can influence the entire state. So it is appropriate for the state to do it generally. Whether you look at individual bills, you'd have to look at individual bills, but having that power to do it is certainly appropriate.
Your response?
I think that I feel that it is. I think the Dillon rule and the House rule is outdated, and I think the state, you have to have some autonomy for different municipalities, and if you don't have that, then, and they know the issues of the local situations, I think that even with the state has control over, the federal government has state report.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question. Would you support an independent commission redistricting legislative and congressional districts? Why or why not? And we'll start with you, Ms. Green-Johnson.
Can you repeat the question again?
Absolutely. The question is, would you support an independent commission redistricting legislative and congressional districts? Why or why not? You'll have 30 seconds for your response.
I think we should have an independent, and we have a perfect example of that in Iowa. They have an independent redistricting committee, and it works famously. It's not working in North Carolina, and it's not fairly done by different parties, whether it be Democrat or Republican.
Thank you. Your response, Mr. Stone.
Well, what's interesting is that whoever's in power at any given time, it seems to have a problem. Whatever maps they draw, the other side will have a problem with it. Having an independent outside group, it's very difficult to take the politics even out of that. So I think that the people know that who they elect to the legislature, they are the ones that are going to be drawing the maps at the end of a census year. So I think it's appropriate to do it the way we've done it. The Democrats, for decades and decades, were drawing the maps in North Carolina, and now they don't like the outcome.
The next question, you'll each have 30 seconds to respond. Citizens demand tax cuts, but also demand better education, health care, roads, technology improvement, etc. How do you balance these conflicting demands? And we'll start with you, Mr. Stone.
Well, I think you balance it the way we actually did balance it. We in the legislature passed a budget that did cut taxes. It cut taxes for working families by increasing the standard deduction. It cut tax rates on corporate and personal income. It put $1.6 billion into a rainy day fund. So you did all those kinds of things through tax cuts, but yet you were still able to increase spending on education by dramatic amounts. Teachers now, for the first time ever in North Carolina, are making $50,000 a year on average. And so I think that goes to show that balance.
Go ahead and challenge Ms. Green-Johnson.
In terms of balancing the budget by decreasing income tax has never worked. And one of the examples is just saying that the teachers got this $50,000 raise. That's incorrect.
Okay, well, I guess I'll have to challenge that since I'll raise my card here. What we actually did show 4 years ago, we took a budget, when the Republicans took the legislature and the governor's mansion, there was a $2.6 billion debt that we had to the federal government. We were running deficits in the budget, and by tax cuts, we have actually now increased our surpluses. We're running over $400 million a year in surpluses. And so we are the model. North Carolina is the model of how tax cuts actually can spur the economy and increase your revenues to the budget.
All right, moving on to the next question. You'll each have 30 seconds to answer this question, which is, do you favor the establishment of a dedicated state funding source for the North Carolina Housing Trust Fund? We'll start with you, Ms. Green Johnson.
I do favor the trust fund for the North Carolina House.
And your response, Mr. Stone?
Well, I know we've got a lot of those kinds of trust funds in urban areas, like in Charlotte, we have that, and that is where some of the need is more important than the rural areas, in part because that's where you have the concentrations of people. That's where a lot of times you have land costs are more expensive to do affordable housing projects. So I think we have to be very careful when you look at a statewide program. Statewide programs don't always work when they're tried to be spread across the entire state. And we have urban issues that are different than rural issues, and statewide programs don't always address the needs of both equitably.
Next question, we'll each have 30 seconds for your response. Does it make sense not to expand Medicaid when North Carolina loses federal tax dollars, health insurance coverage for more people, and more jobs in the health industry? Please explain your answer. Mr. Stone.
Well, Medicaid and expansion of Medicaid is a very complicated issue. If you look at Medicaid and Medicare, it's one of the biggest line items in the state budget. And so you can't just look at that as a yes or no issue. I would say that healthcare issues in Medicaid, for example, is one of the most complicated things that the state will deal with. And even from when you're dealing with urban hospitals versus rural hospitals, where your rural hospitals have a much higher percentage of people on Medicaid, it makes a big difference. So it's a much more complicated issue than just should it expand.
Ms. Green Johnson?
I believe that we should have expanded Medicaid. One, because we have a very serious issue with health outcomes in North Carolina. And we actually decided to not accept $60 million to expand. You had 4 years to then work out all of the problems moving forward. So a lot of folk are without health care because we did not expand health care in the state of North Carolina.
Thank you. The next question, would you reinstate the North Carolina refundable earned income tax credit to give working families a tax break and thus a boost to the local economy? Why or why not? You'll have 30 seconds to respond, and we'll start with you, Ms. Green Johnson.
I think that we need to replace the earned income tax. One, because those folk that actually got the benefit are people that will spend in our economy. And so as a result of that, the revenues have gone down in terms of spending. So I do support replacing or bringing back the earned income.
Thank you. Mr. Stone?
Well, when you look at a budget process from the revenue side and the tax side versus where the benefits come, you've got other benefits that come in as well. You've got, for example, the legislature has increased the standard deduction to $17,500. So that essentially means anyone working in North Carolina, that first $17,500 of income is essentially tax-free. That is directly going to working families. And so it is not a if this, then this kind of scenario. You've got to put all the different tax implications into the whole budget process and look at it in a holistic approach.
The next question, what kind of state plan is needed to ensure water quality and supply in the long term, considering recent coal ash spills, droughts, flooding, conflicting regulations, etc.? You'll have 30 seconds to respond. Mr. Stone.
Well, one of the challenges we have in Department of Environmental Quality is sometimes we have some inconsistencies on which regulations we're actually following in terms of the water quality standards. I am proud that we were able to pass a bill on coal ash this past session that guaranteed clean water to all of the individuals around the coal ash ponds. So that was a big issue that we needed to address, and I'm very pleased that we did it. So Duke Energy is going to have to provide clean water to each and every one of those neighbors around those areas. Ms.
Green Johnson?
Well, it is a complex issue. But one of the things that we need to do is to have more regulations in terms of safety, in terms of water quality. We had a situation where the department head of one of the agencies that sort of policed our water quality resigned simply because she was not satisfied with the reports. And it's important. One of the things about government, we should be about the safety of our citizens.
Thank you. For this next question, you'll each have 30 seconds. What is your position on the sale of military-style weapons, such as high-capacity long guns, to civilians? How do you think continued sales and ownership of such weapons will impact the levels of violence and deaths in our country? What safeguards or legislation do you suggest? We'll start with you, Ms. Green-Johnson.
Well, I think we need to have a better comprehensive gun program in North Carolina. I am bitterly against those weapons that are for military. I'm not against people having just guns because I shop, I used to hunt. But in terms of having military guns, I think there should be regulations about who buys them. There should be also investigations of people that are buying them.
Thank you. Mr. Stone?
So it sounds like anyone who is buying guns legally should be investigated, is what I just heard my opponent say, which is interesting. But if you look at military-style weapons is what the question was, which is, what does that even mean? Is that something that just looks like it? Because that isn't because that is what everything gets lumped into. If it looks like a military-style weapon, then that counts as a military-style weapon. The reality is that there's a lot of folks who have guns that shouldn't, but they aren't the ones that are buying them legally. So we need to make sure that the people who can buy guns legally are the ones that are buying guns legally.
And our final question is, who are you supporting for president? You'll each have 30 seconds. We'll start with you, Ms. Green-Johnson.
I'm supporting Hillary Clinton simply because she's been in the forefront for about 3 decades. And I think as a female in America, she supports my values and I just feel I will be very safe. I think my family will be very safe. So I support Hillary Clinton.
Thank you. Mr. Stone.
Well, the choice is easy for me because Hillary Clinton is the Democratic nominee, and I would just have to agree to disagree with my opponent because she has not kept us safe. When she was Secretary of State, she did not keep us safe. We are in worse situation across the entire country because of her foreign policy that she is implemented. So there really is no choice. I will be supporting the Republican nominee.
Go ahead and challenge.
Mr. Stone, you have 2 daughters. Mm-hmm. Would you feel safe with your choice of Mr. Trump being the president, given his just last comment about women?
Well, certainly his comments were inappropriate, and there's really no defense for those comments. But I would feel much better about their safety in terms of, will there be a terrorist attack? How strong is our military? Those things are much more likely to impact their safety. Will we support our police officers? Those are much more likely to affect their personal safety than the comments he may have made, and certainly could be said about the Democratic nominee's husband has made plenty of comments in the past and done plenty of things in the past. So I think we got to look at the bigger issues of what safety really means.
It's time now for closing statements. You'll each have 30 seconds to make a closing statement. And we'll start with you, Ms. Green-Johnson.
I'm Connie Green-Johnson, and I'm running to bring a voice of reason to the North Carolina House seat 105. When I'm elected, I want to be able to invest more in education, because education is a hallmark of our society and our democracy. I'd like to grow our economy, expand our health care, and develop transportation, which is very needed in our District 105. Thank you.
And time now for your closing statement, Mr. Stone.
Well, I'm very honored to currently serve in the House of Representatives representing Southern Mecklenburg County. It is an important role because we are one of the fastest growing areas of the state, one of the financial drivers of the state. I've got to ensure that we continue to spend fiscally responsibly as we have, and just look at the budget that we've just passed, going from one of the worst economies in the country to now the best economy in the country. And we did it with lower taxes, with higher spending on education, including tax, including for teachers. And but we have a lot more work to do, and I'm looking forward to going back to continue to do that work.
Once again, Connie Green Johnson and Scott Stone are candidates in the North Carolina House of Representatives District 105 race. Thank you both for taking part in this debate. And for more information about the League of Women Voters of Charlotte-Mecklenburg, visit goleaguego.org. And for more information about the candidates, log on to vote411.org. A quick reminder for Mecklenburg County voters, early voting begins Thursday, October 20th. The general election is Tuesday, November 8th. Polls will be open from 6:30 in the morning until 7:30 in the evening. I'm Danielle Koser. Thanks for watching PBS Charlotte.